Welcome back to the Michigan Business Beat, brought to you on the Michigan Business Network. Chris Holman here at our studios in downtown Lansing, and we're spending a little time right now with Robert Hamor. He's an attorney with Foster Swift here in Lansing, but offices literally all over the state. Rob, it is good to have you on. Thank you. This is kind of like every time I talk to someone in HR, I leave the meeting terrified. You know what I mean? So,
this is not going to make you feel better.
I was going to say, try not to scare me, but you already gave it up. Hey, let's talk about what we're here for. And this is going to affect all small businesses out there. The Corporate Transparency Act. Tell us what that is.
Sure. First of all, thank you for letting me to speak on your show today. The Corporate Transparency Act is an act that was kind of passed in the middle of the night on January 1st, 2021. And it was intended to give the Financial Services Center Enforcement Network a lot of information on smaller businesses that just aren't necessarily regulated and watched by the federal government. It's really designed, if you look at the actual legislation, to combat terrorism, bring things up to speed with international regulations, et cetera, et cetera. But the reality is that 90%, by some estimates, of small businesses are going to have to report a lot of information to a giant federal database that can be used for various law enforcement purposes right now. And that's assuming that the ball doesn't move down the road and other agencies start getting access to this database.
So, Rob, does this relate to that and that alone? I can remember 15 years ago, someone from the IRS saying to a room full of small business people, of which I was one, we have identified the tax gap and we think it's in the small business sector.
Sure. Yeah, so I will say this. The database itself, what it's going to be used for in the future, is still up for grabs. Frankly, it hasn't even been created yet. The Financial Services Network is so far behind in implementing this, no one really knows what's going to happen when it actually goes live. And also, the number of companies that are going to have to report because of the vague definition and because it's so broadly encompassing. Basically, it's everyone unless you fall into an exemption. So they really are looking at these smaller companies that they don't have oversight with, through traditional licensing, securities regulation, things like that. They really want to have oversight over almost every single business that's operating in the United States.
Well, and my next question was going to be, who does it apply to? So you're telling us pretty much everyone in the universe.
Sure. So some estimates say about 90% of the companies in the United States are going to have to register in this for this database. Okay. What the key question is, are you what's called a reporting company, right? A reporting company is any company, corporation, limited liability, anything that's created by filing a document with the Secretary of State or a similar office within a state or in an Indian tribal region, right? It also can include foreign companies that come into the United States. So let's be honest, it basically includes every single business entity that's out there. Now, there are some exceptions to that registration. And again, if you fall under that exception, well, guess what? You don't have to register, but chances are your data is already in a federal database somewhere else. And those exceptions include, companies that already report their beneficial information to the federal government, certain service providers, certain large companies. Large companies are more than 20 full-time employees with more than $5 million in gross receipts, certain inactive businesses, and certain tax-exempt entities. So again, it's a really, really broad act. Your mom and pop shop, the haircutting studio, real estate holding companies, small businesses, all of them are going to have this reporting requirement.
Well, and heretofore, those businesses, I don't want to say have been overlooked, but they haven't gotten huge attention. So,
correct.
So what does it require?
So it requires a reporting company to report the beneficial ownership information and some other information to this giant federal database, okay? Just from a high-level overview, the business information, the name, address, jurisdiction of formation, tax information, beneficial ownership information, those people who have quote unquote substantial control, right? Pretty vague definition, right? Or if you own or control more than 25% of the company. And again, we can talk about all the exceptions, way more than 6 minutes to go through all of that. But they're going to be required to report those individuals' names, their date of birth, address, and identification information. In fact, there is a belief that there may actually be a requirement to submit photos of those identification documents in order to make sure that they're properly reported and to cut down on the likelihood of any sort of fraud. And then the applicants, the people who are organizing these companies, the lawyers, the accountants, if you're doing it yourself, same information is going to have to be reported to this federal database. And guess what? If you don't do it, there's both civil and potentially criminal penalties associated with it. This is not a minor act by any stretch of the imagination.
Well, so you were right. You haven't made me feel better.
I'm sorry.
It's all right. Hey, Rob Hamor, attorney with Foster Swift, with offices literally all over the state of Michigan. Thanks for bringing us up. It's not necessarily wonderful news, but it is something that we need to know. And of course, it's going to be a burden on small business because you're going to have to put a half a person in there to regulate this stuff.
Absolutely. Invariably, every business I talk to either thinks it's not going to apply to them or, oh my God, this is going to apply to me.
Yeah,
So,
well, and it may not apply till they get caught, right?
well, as with most things in life, there's some pretty stiff penalties if you want to take that, roll those dice. So,
Yeah, you're absolutely right. All right, Rob, thanks for joining us. We appreciate it, buddy.
Chris, thank you so much for the time. Take care.
All right, you've been watching this on the Michigan Business Beat on the Michigan Business Network. I'm Chris Holman. We'll be right back.